Hey, I'm Melissa.
And I'm Whitney.
We started this true crime podcast over a glass of wine and quickly turned from true crime listeners into true crime advocates.
So get comfy, pop a cork, and grab a glass because we have work to do.
This is Cults, Crimes, and Cabernet.
Some content may be unsuitable for sensitive listeners. Discretion is advised.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. And happy recording day. These are my favorite days of the week.
Oh my God. I know. I love doing the research, finding out about the case, all the ins and outs. And then I love that we get this couple of hours to just chat about it. It really is fun.
It's the best.
Working from home and you're alone a lot.
It's the human interaction we get. So it's nice. Yes. I say human interaction. We have families. I mean, adult interaction outside of your typical, hey, who started to do the dishes conversations.
Yes. And it's all boys in our household. So seriously,
it's nice to have some girl talk, right?
Exactly. So what do we got going on?
Oh, not a lot. The biggest thing is this Thursday. We have our live that we do every other Thursday, but we're going to shake it up a little bit. We are going to do a Q&A because we've never done one before.
I know, and people might have questions. I hope people have questions. Otherwise, it's going to be very boring just watching us stare at each other.
So please DM us your questions. We're going to put it up on our social medias with ways to put it in. It'll be on our stories. It'll be in the comments. Just wherever you find us, write something somewhere. I'm sure it'll get to us eventually, but ask us some questions so that we have something to answer.
Yeah. And this could literally be anything about production, how we get started.
If you want to ask what my favorite candy bar is, throw it out there. I'll let you know.
Patreon highest level members should be receiving their swag boxes any day now if you have not already received it.
Yep. They went out last week. This, I want to say, is one of my favorite boxes that we've done. I say that every single time. One is super fun, and it's just in time for summer. It's a lot of things you can use over the summer, especially if you're a beach goer. That's a little hint. And yeah, I'm excited to see what people think of them.
Yeah, so please let us know what you think. We'll definitely share that on our socials once all of those people have received their boxes because we like it to be a surprise.
Yes. Which wine you got today?
I have, and I could not remember if I've had this before. I'm so bad about it. I know I've had it before, but I don't know if I've had it on the show. Called Funk Zone. Do you remember if I've had this? Funk Zone.
I feel like I've seen that label before, but I don't know if it was just us drinking together or if it was on the show.
I know. It's a white blend from Santa Barbara County. It's 2019. I am really loving white blends lately into the summer months. I love red blends already. Throw in a white blend. It's just such a nice mix. It really is. This has tones of citrus, pear, white flowers. It's very floral. I really like it. Like I said, I've been digging white blends lately.
You said it's very floral, but it's not like perfumey taste.
No, not perfume. So when I did pop the cork, I could smell it right away, even through all my allergies living in Florida. But it's not like where I just think of a grandma with all the extra perfume.
Every time someone says it's florally, that's where my mind immediately goes as to my grandmother's perfume because older ladies tend to generally lean towards those floral-y scents. So that's why I was wondering if that's what you meant.
No, not like that. All right, Nebraska. We are traveling to Chadron, Nebraska, and it is precisely what you think of when you think of Nebraska. It's a very small, rural area that is isolated. The population in 2020 was just over 5,000 people.
And very flat.
Very flat, but then it has slight hills every now and then, and that's actually going to play a part in our case.
Oh,
yes. One notable thing about this area is in 1893, during the Chicago Fair, Chadron was the starting point of a 1,000-mile horse race, and it was called the Chadron Chicago Cowboy Horse Race. Very nice name there. But I'm assuming it started in this town because it was precisely 1,000 miles from Chicago. Not that the town had anything else, but I thought that was pretty cool. But whoever came in first place, they would win $1,000. And this was back in 1893. So
Wow.
that money today, I thought it would be more, honestly. And so it's $34,000 roughly in today's money. But I was expecting it to be like 1 billion. I was like, this has got to be so much money, like winning the lotto.
I was thinking like 6 figures.
I know. So it's
Yes.
130 years ago.
It's good that inflation's not gotten that bad, I guess.
I guess, but still. The name of the town comes from the Lakota language, which is the language spoken by the Sioux Native American tribes. And it means Beaver River City. Every July, they host an annual community celebration, and it's called Fur Trade Days, in honor of its origins as a fur and hide trading post. So this was like a really prominent area for furs. The French and other settlers would come by and trade their furs, buy their furs, that kind of thing. So they kept this alive, and it has thousands of people coming to it every year. They also have a museum about the fur trade there as well. It just shocks me that every small town, when you really think that there's like nothing exciting about it, if you dig in a bit deeper, there's always something going on, something that sets them apart from every other small town in America. I had to use a different site this time to find the crime stats of this small town, because the normal go-to neighborhood scouts, it would not pull anything up for Chadron. So today I'm going to use crimegrade.org. As I was about to start researching this, I was thinking, I am finally going to have a very safe town. This has to be the one that blows all the other cities out of the water as far as safety goes. But I would be wrong.
Oh, no.
This is a different ranking system, but Chadron is ranked a D in the normal A, B, C, D, F grading system. That was really hard to skip the E. I don't know why.
And this is not like D for diplomas or D for degrees kind of a mentality. This is not a good grade here.
Not a good grade. However, violent crime is rated an A minus, so I guess that's good. But then property crime is rated a D minus. It is in the 18th percentile for safety. So meaning 82% of other cities are safer than this place. And I'm just like, what the heck? If you can't be safe in small town Nebraska, where can you be safe at?
Right? What are these 5,000 people getting into?
Seriously. It has a decent sized college in this town as well, which it reminds me of my parents' town that only have 2,000 people in it, but it also has a state junior college there. Steven Paul Haataja was born on July 20th, 1960. He had 3 sisters, Sharon, Laurel, and Emily. During high school, Steven won the West River Math Contest 3 years in a row. To say he was smart would be an understatement. He had a lot of interests, and many would describe him as an interesting guy. Steven was a top-ranked chess player in Nebraska at one point. He got his bachelor's degree in mathematics, but he also minored in theater, psychology, and political science.
Holy cow.
He absolutely loved to learn. He went on to receive his graduate degree in math from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Steven continued his education to earn his PhD in, you guessed it, math in 2006. Even through all of these accomplishments, he was having a rough time personally, and he kind of decided he needed to start fresh. This is because Steven was recovering from a broken hip because of an ice skating accident that happened in March of 2005. He had trouble walking, and he couldn't walk very far on an incline, but if the road was flat, he could usually handle it pretty well. In January of 2006, he was hospitalized for a suicide attempt. He had recently gotten divorced, and with his injuries, he was having problems with his mental health. This is still right before he's graduating with his PhD. So I'm sure the stress of his dissertation and the divorce and not being able to walk, possibly not even be able to work, because I'm not exactly sure where he worked. But all of this kind of piling on him had a profound effect. He was diagnosed with depression. He started medication right away. And Stephen was seeming like he was getting the help he needed and moving forward in life. But like I said, he wanted to start fresh. So he applied and was offered a professor position with the Chadron State College. And he started working there in the fall of 2006. So he moves to this location. He has zero ties to it. He wants to get away from everything, kind of just refocus his attention. And he loved teaching and he loved math, obviously. So he moves there, starts working, fall of 2006. But by December of that same year, he would vanish without a trace. Stephen was described as a shy and nerdy guy with thick glasses and pants too short. He has that dry sense of humor. It is the best. So he goes to this place and he starts to make friends. He's trying to put himself out there. He's done with his own education, but he is now fully focused in on his students. So I said he was shy, but if you got him started on any of the many interests he had, you couldn't get him to shut up. He'd have hour-long conversations about black holes and a math problem that couldn't be solved, that kind of thing. The people that knew him thought he was brilliant, thought he was incredibly interesting because he knew so much about so many subjects.
I love that.
Yes. He was passionate and he was always learning of ways to help his students learn. He was teaching college algebra, calculus, and I think one other type of class at this small college. He was very well liked by the other faculty and his students. He went above and beyond for the students. And on the day he disappeared, he was actually scheduling a makeup exam for a student that missed it. So he was coordinating, what can I do to help you because you can't miss this test or it's not going to be good for the student. So he was taking his free time to help this student. He went out of his way to help these young adults learn, especially a subject that so many young adults do not want to learn. Stephen was working on becoming a part of the community. I have to say, there is a documentary on YouTube that I watched. For Stephen only living in this town a few months, he made quite an impact on the locals. Many people spoke of him as a friend. I mean, we've got the neighborhood bartender literally tearing up because he gave him his first martini. We've got other professors, neighbors, community members, all that took time to speak about Stephen fondly. He even joined the community choir program. I remember he had a love of theater as well as foreign films. So he wanted to meet people and do things in his spare time, like the choir. As an introverted previous military spouse, moving to a town where you do not know anyone can be very scary. So I really have to give Stephen props for putting himself out there and making friends so quickly. On December 4th, 2006, the day started out like any other. Stephen woke up in his basement apartment, got ready for work, and made his way to his office on campus about 8:30 a.m. His first class was at 9, and he proceeded throughout the day like normal. And like I said earlier, he was making plans for that student to make up a test. So around 5 p.m., he is seen in the local Pizza Hut getting something to eat. And then he's back at his office on campus about 6 o'clock that evening. He was then caught on security camera at an ATM, taking out $100. Then he would not be seen again until around 9:10 p.m. that night, when a woman saw him leave his apartment. We know he then walked to only store there in that town and purchased a 7-pound bag of charcoal. He also purchased a bottle of peppermint schnapps. I don't know if he did that at the store or if he had to go to the liquor store, probably, but if he had to purchase that somewhere else. He purchased both of those items that night. The store clerk actually knew him by name and confirmed that Steven did, in fact, come in that night alone. And this was the store he would always go into. This is small towns. And if you're from a small town, you know all the checkout people. You're probably friends, see them on the weekends, that kind of thing. Confirmed sighting of him there. After the store, we really don't know for sure what happened. But the very last time we would know his exact whereabouts would be at 11:41 p.m. that night when his work computer was logged into in his office on campus. So apparently he goes back to his office on campus. I do wonder if there were security cameras on campus. I would assume that there'd have to be. This is 2006. So I would assume somewhere on that campus there is a camera. Because after he logs into his computer that night, there are zero reports of anyone ever seeing him alive again. The next morning, when Steven did not show up for his classes and the staff at the college couldn't get a hold of him, they would call the police to report him missing. So police were made aware of this very quickly. Yes, Steven had only worked there a short amount of time, but he had never been late or missed work in that time and was always willing to pick up a class from other teachers that they missed or anything like that. He was a very reliable person. So it was automatically strange to everyone when he did not show up for work. Police do go to his apartment that morning and to perform a welfare check. And nothing looked suspicious. Steven's apartment was very clean and organized. Friends did report he was compulsively neat. And I don't know why that just coincides with his personality to me. He's a very prim, proper, mathematical, everything has a place type of person. He did have a bike and it was at the apartment as well. He had a car, but it was not working and it was also at the apartment. And he hadn't been driving this car at all. He would always walk, I think it was 9 blocks or something, to the college every day and then walk back. He would walk around town. Everyone would see this guy walking around town, which isn't uncommon for small towns when you only have to walk 9 blocks to work.
Exactly.
And no busy road, because I'm sorry, Tampa or the whole Florida area is notorious for people getting hit by cars. So I'm always like, why would anyone walk anywhere where there weren't perfectly designated walkways or sidewalks? Because
Exactly.
not happening. Police did find perishable food in the fridge, including milk that had recently been purchased. So they didn't think he would have just taken off after buying all these groceries. Also remember, this is a super rural town, slightly isolated from any other towns. So his walking would have been out of the question unless he hitchhiked. But this is 2006. Hopefully people stopped that. Or someone he knew gave him a ride somewhere. But the problem with that is that everyone he knew had zero clue where he was at. His family, no one knew. There was quite a bit of blame laid on local authorities by the public over Steven's investigation, or I should say initial investigation. Police weren't actively looking for him. He's an adult and he had just moved to the area that he had zero ties to. They honestly just thought he skipped town. Just like he did, 6-7 months prior to this. Another professor at the Chadron State College who taught forensics there and was a previous homicide detective, he would lead searches with his classes and try to assist the investigation. But it wouldn't take long before local authorities would tell him to stop searching. And then the college would tell him not to use their resources in the search for Steven, including the email that he would send out to update the people searching from his work email. So they said, you cannot even use the email. It's like they're being charged per email. I don't think so. By the very next year, this forensic professor would not be given the opportunity to renew his contract. And he said he believes it is in direct response to his outspokenness about the Steven case and how he thought police did not do what they should have done. You would think that this college, at the very least, somewhere where he worked, they would want to help in any possible way they could. And if you want to even think selfishly, this is a good opportunity for the forensic students to get hands-on experience as well. But the college didn't want any part of it. On March 9th, 2007, local ranchers were looking for a runaway steer in the area known as Pine Ridge when they stumbled upon a body that had been charred. This area had experienced a wildfire the previous summer, but this body looked like it hadn't been out there for that long. They alerted authorities right away, and the rumor mill started running wild. This is completely normal for small towns. I literally lived in a small town my senior year, and you would think the high school gossip wouldn't make it into grown-ups' lives, but oh man, it did. So I know this lifestyle, and I'm sure Whitney knows this as well.
Yeah, my whole life was a small town. So,
And
until I went to college, and even then, that was still considered a small town. I mean, 100,000 people is not a big city at all. So I went from tiny town to it's a little bit bigger. But yes, rumors. I think I was pregnant 5 times in high school and didn't even know it.
Exactly. It's absolutely insane. But it doesn't stay in high school in small town.
No.
The adults know about it and they're spreading it and they're getting involved. And I'm just like, well, what the heck? I never experienced anything like that growing up in California until I moved to very rural Oklahoma.
The rumor mill in small towns churn like nobody's, like, I imagine it as, those water wheels that would go on like a river to produce power.
Yes,
It's like that, just nonstop.
exactly. And that's so funny. One of my many times speaking about mental health, I've always pictured a water wheel whenever you're getting anxiety. And then now that's going to correlate to something totally different now that you just brought that up. It would really help relax me if I think about a water wheel. But
Well, I'm
Okay.
sorry to create a new trauma for you.
oh, that's okay. I will find something else that relaxes me. It wouldn't take long for the medical examiner to confirm that this was indeed Steven. But the circumstances regarding his death would be anything but straightforward. Steven was the only person missing in this town, so as soon as the body was found, people were like, that's got to be Steven. I wonder what's happening. And the rumors were crazy. Steven was found about 3/4 of a mile away from the college. So not very far at all, I think within walking distance. However, this was pretty hilly terrain and it was actually like a ravine. It would be also completely dark if he disappeared out there that very night. Like almost pitch black, we're talking.
No, it would just be moonlight and stars.
Yes. His body was significantly burned. We're talking like 98 to 99% of his body. Zero evidence of anyone other than Steven being out there that night. His body was bound around the torso and ankles and to a tree. The manner of death was smoke inhalation and obviously for being significantly burned. This is the only information police released at the initial press conference after the body was found. They did state that they didn't know at that point if this was murder or suicide. Locals were upset with the lack of searches and couldn't understand how this could be him taking his own life. Police explained that Steven's hands were not bound, so he could have tied himself up. And even though he had trouble walking, it was not impossible for him to walk to this location.
But I have more questions. Where his feet and torso was bound to the tree, but his hands were not. What was it bound with? Was it rope that burned off?
No,
That could have burned off?
It was more of a wire, I believe, and it was
Oh.
still there. Yes. Even though the buttons on his clothing melted away. Like that is how hot the fire got. And I don't know if his ankles were bound to the tree or if it was just his midsection was bound to the tree, and then his ankles were tied together.
Oh, separately? But that seems excessive. If you are going to go through an attempt to unalive yourself, wiring your legs together to tie them together, and then walking out this distance in the dark, wiring your legs together, finding a tree to tie yourself to, and then
setting yourself on fire. Yeah. The family was in complete support of law enforcement. This never happens, first of all. I don't even care if it is 100% committed suicide. The families are never in support. But this family was just be like, we need to give time to the police. They're the ones doing the investigation. They even made statements, and I quote from his family, "We don't want others to speculate on what happened to Steven. It doesn't serve any purpose other than hurting the investigation and his family," end quote. So they're just saying, hey, if the police think it's a suicide, that's what we're going to go with. We don't want to speculate. However, his friends that had known him for the 7 months prior to his death, they were speculating, let's just say. They believed it was a homicide and not a suicide, no matter what the police said. Steven was a large man. We're talking, he was like 6'4" tall, 230 pounds. The thought that someone carried him out all of this way or forced him through this hilly, rocky terrain is not exactly plausible either. Unless we're talking multiple people would have had to carry him. Not one person could have carried this huge man out there.
Yeah.
So remember the charcoal he bought that night? Well, there was a charcoal fire next to his body. And all the reports said he was alone when he made the purchase of the charcoal. And that bottle of alcohol was found next to his body. And I would assume because the authorities stated there was zero evidence of anyone else being out there, I would hope that they tested the bottle for fingerprints or DNA on the bottle, because that's how you're going to exclude these people. They better have tested that. They didn't come out right and say that, but I hope with them saying there's zero evidence anyone else was out there, that is what they meant.
Yes.
They would release some information from the autopsy, and it turns out that Steven had a high level of alcohol present in his system. That and the bottle found points to him obviously drinking heavily that night. But on the other side of the coin, everyone Steven had met and become friends with said he was happy with his new job. He was making plans and he had just bought groceries. Why would he have done this? Why would he make an appointment with his student to make up the test? And these people that he knew around that time were just, he would not have done this. And one man in the documentary even stated that he had other friends that had committed suicide and he said, looking back, I could see things that happened or things that were said that didn't make any sense then, but after their death, he looked back and was like, oh, I see the signs now. And he said, looking back at all of his time with Steven, he never could find one instance where he felt like Steven was depressed or he was going to take his own life.
Yeah.
Theories over the years have been pretty outlandish. I mean, we've got a serial killer traveling through the area to come upon Steven as he was walking around town and just kill them. Another one was that this was a hate crime because Steven appeared to be effeminate. And many thought this was because he was part of the LGBTQ community. And apparently this town is one of those backwood places that do not accept love as love. I do want to mention there is zero evidence of Steven being anything but straight, but I did want to mention this rumor because the locals would mention it in the documentary. It would be reported in a few news articles as well that this may be the case. I just think he was quirky and people might not have understood that if they weren't at his level of expertise in the world.
Yeah.
A psychic came forward and said that Steven was killed by a student and he was in the basement somewhere. But obviously that proved to be completely false when they found him tied to a tree out in the middle of nowhere. Steven Haataja's death has been ruled a suicide. and a ruling that his family has accepted. However, his death still causes people to question pretty much everything about this case. This case reminds me of that Deborah Collier case. Remember, out of Georgia? We covered it a while ago. Her case was also ruled a suicide, just like Steven's.
Yes, and also involved fire.
Yep, in the middle of nowhere.
And a tree.
Not tied to it, but like she was holding on to this tree. That one, I could not understand how it was suicide either. I couldn't believe it was suicide. So it's understandable that people who knew Steven could not fathom that he would take his life in such a gruesome way. It's elaborate what he did if he did this. Very elaborate. And he just doesn't seem like an elaborate guy. You know what I mean? He's smart. He's methodical. Like he's thinking everything through. Burning yourself to death? I don't know. Another thing that I briefly touched on is that he had a broken hip just a year prior and was still recovering. Many people do not believe he would have been able to make the walk through that terrain in the complete dark while drunk, carrying all the stuff too. Because remember, he has the bag of charcoal, he has the bottle of alcohol.
Wire to tie himself up with.
Really?
Was he on any pain medication for his hip?
I don't even know that. I knew he was on depression medication, but I don't know if he was on anything else. But that's interesting to note. But yes, this case is technically solved because it's suicide. It is still very mysterious. And many people have a lot of questions about what happened. And just in case that this wasn't a man taking his own life, I feel like we need to know more. So if you have any information about what happened in this quiet Nebraska town, please contact Chadron Police Department at 308-432-0510.
Wow.
That is Nebraska.
Just by listening to our content, you too are advocating for justice for these families. Thank you for making a difference in their lives as well.
We want to share a few ways you can support us to continue our mission. You can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $1 per month, or a simple rate and review on your favorite podcast platform helps us get in front of someone who may know something.
We will continue traveling state by state, seeking justice, because we will be there, no matter where,
no matter who.